Story 1. My wife always said to marry again if something happened to her. She passed away 6 years ago. Cannot even fathom the idea. Story 2. No. I want her to wear only black for her remaining years and live in solitude composing poetry about my greatness and her loss. Story 3. I tell him that I would haunt him mercilessly, but I see how happy he is with me and want him to be loved and cared for if I am not here. However, I would also keep an eye on him if that turns out to be necessary. Story 4. I lost my dearly loved husband 2 years ago and have absolutely no desire to marry again. It is very peaceful here with just me and the cat. However, if I had passed first, I would have very much wanted him to remarry. God bless him. His arthritis restricted his mobility so much he needed help, but he was such a wonderful, funny, kind companion that he was well worth helping. I would have hated to think he would be alone. Story 5. Whatever makes her happy now or after I am gone. After I am dead, why would I care as long as she is happy, safe, and taken care of? Story 6. I do not have a preference on this. I believe whatever option helps him grieve, heal, and be happy is best. Story 7. Only if he really wants to. I would not remarry, though. If I outlive my husband, I am done with dating and would prefer to be alone. Story 8. It totally depends on your age. If you are young, then yes, of course. We have been married for almost 40 years and are in our mid-60s with 3 grown children. We have discussed this and there is no reason for either of us to get remarried. Why not date or live together, but avoid remarriage? It is a disaster waiting to happen, especially for your estate and children to lose their inheritance. We have seen this happen twice where an older man remarried and his children received nothing when he died. Both times involved dishonesty and deceit with the surviving spouse and her family. Story 9. Absolutely. I would not want my husband to spend the rest of his life alone. He is already a bit of a loner, and I would hate to think of him having no one to share his life with. Story 10. I hope she does and is constantly disappointed by how inferior her new partner would be, constantly nagging him like, "My late husband wouldn't do that. My late husband would have done a better job." Story 11. Yes. When married, you generally want the other person to be happy and cared for. Feelings like jealousy do not come into it at all for me. Story 12. I know for certain that I will never marry again if my wife predeceases me. I am comfortable being alone. I would prefer that she never remarry. I just do not want complications with our estate, so our children will have a comfortable inheritance. Story 13. I've told him he can move on, but he better have some standards and wait until he and the kids are really ready. Also, I find it extremely disrespectful to move on quickly. If I die in January and he's having one-night stands or dates in March, I'll haunt him. These conversations are mostly in jest. When we were younger, my husband was in the Army infantry. His first deployment was to Iraq in 2006, and it was bad. Before they left, the Army gave them paperwork to plan their funerals. It was really hard going through all that with him. I remember telling him if he died, that was it for me, that I'd never put myself out there again. I'll never forget when he looked at me so seriously and said, "No, baby, you were meant to be loved. If I don't come back, I expect you to eventually move on and be happy again. You aren't made to be alone, so don't isolate yourself like that. Know that it's what I want." I sobbed. I know it wasn't easy for him to say, but he knew I would need those words if it ever came to pass. Luckily, he made it home both times and got out of the military. We've been married almost 20 years now, this October, and I still doubt I'd be able to date or remarry, but I'll never forget that conversation. Story 14. No, I am a selfish person and he should regret it forever. If he were to remarry, I would haunt them both. But he knew whom he married, so it's fine. Story 15. I don't mind if he remarries. He promises he won't, but we have an agreement. No step-parents or significant others while our child is still growing up in our home. We have seen step-parents become children's first abusers and do not want that for our son. Story 16. No. If there is an afterlife, things will become strange and confusing if he appears with another woman. Story 17. No. If he wants a relationship, that is fine, but there is no way I want him to compromise any assets that will eventually go to our children. He agrees. I will never marry again. Story 18. I'm strange. I would hate for someone else to play house and mother with my children, but obviously we cannot control what happens after we leave this earth. Story 19. Yes. I have told my husband, with whom I have been together for 21 years and married for 11, many times that if I die, he must move on and meet someone else. We have never wanted children and are now in our early 40s, but I have always advised him never to get a vasectomy in case I die. He remarries someone younger and ends up wanting children in a different relationship dynamic. However, he always says he would just want to be a peculiar man living in a van with a dog. Story 20. My petite, very sweet aunt was married to the same man for 40 years. When he died, she said, "I can't believe I stayed with that man so long. This nice little old lady." Story 21. My father did this even though my mother, who has dementia, is still alive. His girlfriend lives with him and my mother lives in a group home. Story 22. Yes, and I have told him that. He said he would not want to. I said I would haunt him if he did not. Then he said good, because then he would still get to be with me. Jerk. Story 23. If he met someone good for him, yes. But she better be okay with coexisting with an annoying ghost if I get a chance to haunt him. I won't intrude, just prank him a lot. I already told him if he goes first I want to go full Miss Havisham level crazy. Wear elaborate morning or bridal attire. Walk with a parasol when I'm forced outside. Hiss at new people. He keeps me grounded in reality. Without him, all bets are off. Story 24. My bigger question is if you are happily married young and your spouse dies unexpectedly, which is terrible, but then 10 years later you remarry, who do you end up with after you die, if you believe in that? Story 25. No. I would never move on and marry again. I do not see myself committing my life to anyone else. I hope he feels that kind of epic love as well, like no one else could ever compare. Edit. The question was about remarrying. Therefore, my answer is about remarrying. Nobody said he has to be alone forever. However, he would most likely choose to be anyway. Story 26. Yes, absolutely. I love my wife, and if I passed away, I would want her to be happy again. Since I would be gone, I cannot make that happen. Story 27. I do not care. I will be dead, so what does it matter to me if he wanted to get remarried? I would want him to have whatever life he wants to have and to be happy. Story 28. If he wanted to, sure. If I am dead, I am not exactly going to care. If they died, I would want them to be okay with me remarrying as well if I met the right person down the line. I am not in the camp that every person has one soulmate. Story 29. I have been with my wife since we were kids, celebrating 15 years and anticipating the birth of our first child in August. I have been very fortunate to receive the love that she gives. She has so much of it that I would hate to deprive the world of her goodness, especially selfishly after death. I hope that neither of us has to think about this for many years. However, if it were to happen, her light should continue to shine with whatever and whoever makes her happy. My only act of selfishness is that no other man will be called Dad. That is reserved for me, forever. Our daughter can call him by his name, Guy, or whatever else fits. I am only partly joking. Story 30. My significant other and I were at a bar having dinner, watching a couple who were clearly on a date. As I watched her flip her hair, place her hand on his shoulder, put her hand under her chin, listen intently, and laugh, I told my significant other that if something were to happen to them, I wouldn't have the energy to put that much effort into dating. No, I would not remarry. I have told my significant other to remarry, and they say they won't, but I know they cannot be alone. Story 31. Sure. Why not? I would be dead and would not know anything. I hope my ex gets married. She is a wonderful person. Story 32. No, but my spouse already made it clear he would, because he is not raising our children by himself, and expects me to do the same. But I guess I will just haunt them. I personally would not, though. I plan on having a Golden Girls house if this is the case. Taking applications now. Story 33. If I die right now while my son is still young, 9 years old, no, I would not be okay. My biggest fear is someone mistreating my child while I am not here on earth. However, if children are all 18 years old or older, I would be okay with him moving on and getting remarried. Story 34. Yes, I would want him to be happy, and if that means remarrying, then by all means go for it. I would not remarry though. Marriage is hard work, and I do not have it in me anymore to put that much effort in. Story 35. I want her to do whatever makes her happy. I do not want her to spend the rest of her life alone. That is no way to live. Story 36. I would want him to find happiness and not be alone, so yes, I would. He has already clearly said it will never happen though. Story 37. It's entirely up to her, but I honestly doubt she would remarry. She is pretty independent as it is, and I do not think she would be interested in going through the whole dating process again. If she passed away, I probably would not remarry either. I would likely look for a few people with whom I can spend time, such as going out to dinner, watching a film, or traveling, but I doubt I would remarry. I enjoy having time alone. Story 38, of course. I mean, only if he found someone who made him happy, not due to social pressure or anything. He is my favorite person. I would fight for him. I want him to have love and companionship. He is incredible and full of kindness, and I hope someone else out there sees that and values him. I would not want him to be alone. If he did not want to get married again, I at least hope he has close friendships and connections and an active social life. Story 39. Yes, to the right person. We have 2 daughters, and I want my family to find love and become whole again. My husband is a good man and would never let my kids forget who their mother is. Story 40. Oh yes, I love him so much, and if I were no longer there for him, I would absolutely want him to have someone to take care of him, be his companion and friend. He is such a wonderful human being, just trying to do the best he can. He absolutely deserves a companion. If I am gone, why would I even care? Story 41. No, or it depends, because the amount of money I leave her should go only to my daughters. I have 2 beautiful baby girls, and I do not want them losing the money I worked for, the money my mother worked for, or the money my father worked for. I would hate for my daughters not to receive these securities if something happens to their mother while married, before she can set things up. I can imagine someone trying to keep it for his children or family. I have no problem with her dating and being in a relationship, but I would not want her to remarry. Conflicts between spouse and children can become complicated with the deceased. Story 42. Yes, because I know for a fact that my wife will be absolutely miserable if I die first, and I would want her to find someone like me or even better. I would not want her to spend the rest of her life alone, sad about what she lost. Story 43. I would not necessarily be upset if he remarried, but it depends on the circumstances whether that is what I would want him to do. If I died now, I would want him to find happiness again, but our children would need to come first until they are older. If I die when I am old, I would not want him to remarry. I do not think I would remarry if he died, no matter the circumstances. Story 44. Yes, go for it. We are in our late 30s, still plenty of time left to find someone new. I will not mind. I will be dead. Story 45. Yes. I do not want my husband to spend his life alone. The only thing we have agreed on is that we will be buried next to each other. But he is free to remarry if I pass away. I just want him to be happy, and I will be gone. Story 46. Yes, he is young, attractive, and an absolutely beautiful person on the inside. He deserves love and a partner. Story 47. My husband and I had the same discussion. We both said we would want the other to move on. 2 years after his passing, I am still single. Story 48. Yes, absolutely. I have loved being married to my husband. Having a partner in life makes life so much better. If I were to pass away, I would want him to be happy and married again. I mean, maybe wait 6 months, but then start living life. Story 49. Absolutely, I would want them to. I would not want to think of them moping away for the rest of their life. I would want them to move on and be happy. Story 50. I obviously do not like the thought of my wife with someone else, but more than anything, I want her to be happy. I also do not like the thought of her being lonely, wallowing in sorrow, and not living her life. So yes, if she feels like her path to happiness is companionship, I would want that for her. Story 51. Absolutely. If I died, both of us would have fulfilled the until death do us part portion of our vows. Story 52. Yes, she should enjoy her life and marry if she wants. I will be dead, and I am not a sociopath, so go ahead, wife. Story 53. I would want him to, but I know he would not be bothered to try dating again. If he died, I do not think I would have the energy or inclination to try dating either. It is rough out there. Story 54. I've thought about this a lot since I am riddled with health problems. I would because I would want him to be happy. He is such a loving person and easy to fall in love with, so I do not think it would be hard for him to find someone. I would never want to be a ghost that haunts him and keeps him unhappy for the rest of his life. I would never want him to forget me, but I would not want it to take over his life. Story 55. Yes. If he finds someone he loves, I would prefer that he do so. I wouldn't want him to be depressed for the rest of his life, and without someone there to share all the love he has, I think he would be. He might be the type to live like a 1940s housewife and try never to remarry, but I think that would be a terrible waste. I also hate the idea of him being sad and alone in general. Love isn't replaceable. Every time you find it, it is entirely new. Just like you can love a series of dogs without diminishing your love for the ones that came before, people love the same way. Each new person fills an entirely new section of your heart, and they can cherish those who were lost in the same way the widowed can. Love is a beautiful thing. I wouldn't want to stop someone, especially someone I love, from experiencing it again. I don't think I would remarry, though. Story 56. If he really wanted to, yes. However, he told me he would never marry again. I think if he met the right person, he would. Story 57. I would not want to overthink it too much. I just want them to be happy when I am gone and to look after the children in the best way they see fit. Story 58. Yes. If that would make her happy, I want her to be happy. No. If she does not want to, I do not want her to have a life she does not want. Story 59. I am fine with her finding someone else. People should not be alone. However, I advised her to work with a financial advisor to keep her money separate from anyone new. Story 60. I would want my spouse to be happy if I passed away. I would never ask him to remain single for me after my death. Story 61. So my wife, age 28, passed away from a vehicle collision. It was not an instant death, but ultimately I decided to remove her from life support because the quality of life was never going to exist. After many rounds of therapy, I was ready to move on. I am only dating and taking it slow. My recommendation is to have these discussions with your partner. Discuss what you want if you find yourself on life support or moving on. Also, no matter your age, always have a will because with death, difficult people may begin to take advantage. Story 62. I would want my husband to do what makes him happy. If he finds someone that he would like to marry, then he has my blessing. I have told him this. I do not want him to spend his remaining time on earth wallowing in sadness if I pass away before him. On the other hand, I do not think I would remarry if he died. What we have is really special and amazing, and I just do not know that I would be able to make a similar connection with someone else. I guess if I found someone I connected with the same way, then maybe, but I just do not see myself finding or even wanting to look for another partner. I have enough wonderful friends for companionship in my life. I just do not think I would have the desire to date again. Story 63. If he wanted to, I would want him to. As much as I cannot imagine life without him, I also cannot imagine being alone again, and I would not wish that on him either. Story 64. This is a really hard one based on our life circumstances. We've talked about it before, and I don't think he could, but we both have a best friend who, even with no romantic interest and definitely nothing sexual, I could absolutely see him marrying just for the friendship and the ability to still be close with someone. You have to be best friends with each other to get married, right? It doesn't always have to be for romance. If you're that close as friends, in my eyes, I don't see why not. especially if there are benefits like easier financial arrangements. But that is still secondary to knowing you're forever appreciated just for being around. Story 65. I wish my brother would have recovered after his wife died in his arms. He never got over that. After 10 years, he accidentally overdosed on prescription medications and alcohol and died. He couldn't move on. He left my nephew an orphan at 12. He is now 26. I, on the other hand, hope he will recover. Unfortunately, he is dying due to several health issues, and we have already had this discussion. Story 66. Want is not quite the word. I certainly would not be bothered if she did. I would want her to have companions to whatever degree made her happy. Story 67. My partner and I are inseparable. We have been together since the ages of 13 and 15. If he left, I would likely follow by any means. He is my best friend in this life and every life before and after. At least that is what I believe. But if I were to go first, I would not blame him if he did not follow me. I would not care because I would be dead and waiting for him in the afterlife. Whatever he did would be up to him. Story 68. I would totally support her remarrying even if I am still around. Heck, I might even help her pick the man. Story 69. It has been 4 months since she passed, and I do not see myself ever remarrying. She said she wanted me to not be alone, but I cannot see myself ever being in another relationship. Story 70. Absolutely. Not only would I never want my husband to be lonely, but we are about to have our first child. If I died, I would want them to have a mother. Children do best in a two-parent household. Story 71. It does not matter what I think in this situation. I am dead. She will do what she wants to do. End of story. Story 72. Of course, if they find someone for them. Growing old alone is difficult, and I want them to have someone to take care of them, whether a spouse, children, extended family, or other chosen family. I would ask that our financial affairs be in order, which they already are, but kept updated regularly until my death. This is so that they and any future children are partially protected financially through a marital trust governed by my will. Elder fraud is a serious concern as well. Story 73. I would encourage her to seek happiness, and if that includes remarrying, absolutely. But knowing her, she probably would not. Story 74. My husband was a loner before me. I assume he will become a loner after me. I have asked my neighbors not to let him become a hermit if I pass away first. Story 75. Not married, but 10 years and counting, and we have a child. That must count for something. It really depends, to be honest. To a good woman who takes care of our daughter like she is her own, who truly cares about the little family I left behind. Yes. Anything less? No. I would rather have my daughter grow up with just her father than with a pretend mother who does not really care about her and thinks she is a burden. I would rather have my partner feel lonely than have someone who is doing irreversible damage to the relationship he has with his daughter and then leaves because she cannot always get her way. Story 76. My wife is a very independent woman who can decide on her own. I want her to do what she feels is right for her, and I know she can distinguish a good partner from a bad one. If the next person is good enough for marriage, why not? Story 77. When you are dead, you do not care. I will tell you as a widower, though you carry some mixed emotions about it. Story 78. I wouldn't mind. I mean, not right away or too quickly, but he deserves to be happy. As long as the new girl is respectful of my memory and kind to my children. He says he wouldn't want that and that he wouldn't like it if I did. I say the only other male coming into this home would be a big dog, which he won't allow as long as he is alive. Story 79. I would want my wife to remarry. Life is too hard to go through it alone. I hope she can find someone to enjoy her years with. I have had a few brushes with death, and I thought about asking her to promise that she would go on a few dates before a certain number of years. I would hate the idea of her being lonely. Story 80. I want him to be happy, even if it is not with me. So yes, besides, who am I going to haunt if he does not? Story 81. If she makes him happy, then absolutely. I even told my teenager that if I pass away and their father finds someone he wants to be with, Please be respectful. I mean, unless his new partner is unpleasant. But I do not foresee my husband choosing to spend the rest of his life with someone who is unkind to his one and only child that he adores. Story 82. I want him to be happy. I hope he does not do it a few months after I have died. I hope he gives my children time to grieve and be ready for a new woman in the home. Story 83. We both agreed that if either passed away, the other could date and be in relationships, but no living together until our daughter is well out of the house. I would honor that, and I believe my husband would as well. Story 84. Not married but will be when we finish school. Yes, I would want her to. We are too young for her not to move on. I am not sure I would though. I am comfortable and happy in this relationship, and I do not think I would want to move on. I will live with my cats and do my own thing. Story 85. I would be indifferent. My significant other can do whatever they want. I cannot think of a situation where I would care less. Story 86. If I passed and my wife met someone that made her a little happier and her life easier, I would say yes. All I want is for her to be happy. He must stay away from my sneaker collection. That is for my son, especially the Mag and Dior ones. Story 87. My partner lost his wife and met me afterward. Of course, I would want him to find someone if I died as well, provided he wanted to. Story 88. I think it depends a little bit on age. We are in our 40s. I would absolutely want her to find someone else. If we were in our 80s and she wanted to remarry, I might feel differently. Story 89. I hope he will marry again. It was almost a miracle he ever met me and fell in love in the first place. I really doubt he will find someone he likes if I die. He is a very reserved person and a major homebody. He would be left with our young child, which I imagine would make that situation even more difficult. Story 90. Of course I would. I will be dead anyway, so it will not affect me. Besides, I am a very firm believer in finding whatever bit of happiness you can with the time you have in the world. If my wife met someone who made her happy, I would not want to deny her that. But honestly, knowing my wife and the kind of person she is, I am pretty sure she would not even go on one date if I died. Story 91. Yes. My wife is quite a bit younger than I am. I would die twice if I knew she was still young and beautiful with no one to appreciate her. Story 92. I would not care what he did as long as he took care of our daughter. If he found someone who loved her as much as I do, and if my daughter liked them in return, I would prefer that. Knowing my husband, he dislikes being alone and becomes easily stressed. So having someone around to guide him when he needs it and help with our daughter would put my mind at rest. Story 93. As long as the other person makes him happy and she is loving and supportive of our son, I don't have any problems with him remarrying. He says he wouldn't, so I tell him to keep his heart open because he is such a wonderful man. It would be a shame if he was not able to experience the emotional intimacy of a healthy relationship again. Plus, I don't expect him to be a priest. Physical connection is important too. I just hope that she would care for his heart. Outwardly, he is a tough man, but inwardly, he is a sweetheart who needs a lot of trust before he will open up. Story 94. I would be okay with him remarrying if he wanted to. I would almost want him to, but somehow I do not think he would want to. That is not being vain or boastful. I just think he agrees with me when I say I will never remarry since I would not have the energy to break in a new husband, as my mother calls it. I am 64 and he is almost 60. We were both single for a long time before we found each other in our mid and late 30s, so we both know how to live alone. Story 95. My wife and I have a deal. If one of us dies, the other should look for a new partner. It saves all the awkwardness if there is an afterlife. I have seen many examples of people being jealous of deceased spouses and doing harmful things to try to erase their memories. If my wife died, I would like to be with someone who understands how I feel and helps me preserve her memory. Marriage, though? Probably not. What is the point? Story 96. I lost my husband at 40. If I had gone instead of him, I would have wanted him to find happiness if he could. Story 97. Yes. I do not like the idea of her having to go on alone. Currently, we have 3 disabled adult children. There is no way she could handle that responsibility by herself. Story 98. I guess it depends on when I die. If it is next week, yes, I do not want her to be miserable and alone for 40 to 60 years. If it is when I am about 85, I still would not care. She should be happy, but I do not see that as likely. Story 99. No, because no one deserves to be put through the pain he causes. Sadly, he would not last long alone, so I am sure he would have a new wife soon after I passed. Story 100. I would move to an area with ethical and legal prostitution. To quote Robin Williams, "My wife's dead, chief." Story 101. I think it depends on how old our children are. I care about my husband being happy and not lonely, and there is no jealousy in it for me. I care more about my children understanding, being happy, comfortable, and not feeling as though their mother is being replaced. I think he would agree. Story 102. They can, but I am going to haunt them. Check that they are being treated right. It feels horrible to think about, but I want them to be happy. Story 103. No. We have been married for 49 years, and I am a jealous type. He must stay single. He can have as many affairs as he wants, but no one else gets to marry him or I will haunt him. Story 104. Not wanting them to would be selfish. My wife passed away from cancer nearly 4 years ago at 42. She was very clear that she needed me to fall in love again, to be happy, and to let our daughter, now 20, see me love, be loved, and be happy. Story 105. If it made him happy, yes, I would want him to. Why would I want someone that I love so much to be alone and miserable? Story 106. To me, he may do what his heart wants. If another person took my place in the home before the children left it, I would haunt him mercilessly. Everything that comes from my family is for my children only. Story 107. Bro, I'll be gone. They can do whatever they want. I have no say in the matter. I just want them to be happy. Story 108. I want my spouse to be happy. If that means she remarries or does not, she has my blessing either way. Story 109. If I passed away and my husband found a woman who truly loved and supported him and our children, which would not be easy as they have special needs, I would feel like I could not have asked for anything better for my family given the situation. Story 110. I want my husband and children to be happy, no matter what that looks like, as long as they all find peace. Story 111. He is free to do whatever he wants after I am gone. I just hope he is loved by someone. I only want love for my loved ones when I am gone. Story 112. I'll be dead. What do I care? That is seriously my answer. Any partner I have had has dated people before they met me. The world existed before I was born. Why would I want them to stop living and the world to cease to exist just because I am gone? Story 113. My husband and I disagree on this. I would want him to be with someone else, as I expect I would find someone to be with after a while if he passed. It is normal to seek companionship, and I would not want him to be alone any more than I would want to be alone. He said he cannot imagine being with anyone else, let alone going through the effort of looking for someone. He seemed a bit hurt by my answer. Story 114. I want my partner to be happy if anything were to happen to me. However, it would not be my decision after that if I were to pass away. It would be their choice whether they want to have a new partner. Story 115. I cannot imagine a more insecure position than, I will be jealous if you remarry once I am in the grave. It seems pathetic to me. Story 116. Sure, I will be dead. What do I care? What am I supposed to do? Clank my ghostly chains in disapproval. Story 117. My wife passed away a year and a half ago. She wanted me to remarry quickly, but I just can't do it yet. I'm not wearing black and crying all the time, but I don't think I'll find anyone I enjoy being around as much as I enjoyed being around her. So I'm comfortable just being alone with our 8-year-old child. Story 118. It takes a special kind of selfishness to expect someone else to stop living life because yours is over. Story 119. No, I am dragging him into hell with me so I will not be bored. Just kidding. I hope he finds a way to make himself happy. Honestly, If I could wipe his memory of me when I die, I would. I would not want him to be in pain. Story 120. I wouldn't mind. But I did tell my husband that if that person isn't good to my child, I will haunt both of them. I also made sure to put my personal assets in a trust for my son. My husband is not in charge of the trust, so even if he marries someone who is only interested in money, my son will be taken care of. I did this because I have a home, savings, and investments on my own. I have seen 3 of my uncles marry the first bad choice that came along because they do not know how to be alone. I trust my husband but did not want to risk it. Story 121. I will be dead. The only request I have after my death is to not have a funeral and simply leave my body in the woods to nourish the trees. I am making sure of this in my will. Everything else does not matter to me because I will be dead. Story 122. I want him to be happy, but I want the money we save together to go to our children, not to her or any children she brought into the relationship. Story 123. Even in her 50s, she regularly receives attention in public. If I am not around, I want her to have as much of that experience as possible. Story 124. Sure, I don't own him. Why would I want him to live the rest of his life grieving instead of finding happiness? Story 125. I want her to be happy, so if she wants to, good for her, and if she does not, that is the right way. As long as she is happy, it is not wrong. Story 126. I am 31, and my husband passed away 2 weeks ago. We were together for 11 years. Will I date and enter into another relationship? Maybe. Will I ever remarry? No. I know if I were the first to go, I would not want my spouse to be lonely forever. I do not think he would want me to be lonely either. Story 127. Yes, because he has so much love to give and needs people around to care for, or 5 dogs. Either is fine. He enjoys caring for someone and is an excellent life partner. He deserves to be loved and cared for in return. Whoever ends up with him is very lucky. I know he will always love me, and a new person enriching his life does not reduce what he has. I am not sure he would do it, but I hope he does. Story 128. No, but I have no problem with her getting a significant other. Marriage would just complicate our children's inheritance. It is not that it could not be protected, just more complicated. Story 129. If she wants to, I love her and think we are soulmates. But if something happened, I would not expect her to live out her days alone. Now, I doubt she would ever get remarried. She would just dive 100% into her business and our kids. She would make being a grandmother a full-time job. But I am not going to think any more about this. Story 130. I am older than my husband by several years, so it is likely that I will pass away before he does. I do not want him to be alone, but he says he will be. Story 131. Yes, I would. They deserve to be happy. As for me, I would not. I do not hold myself to the same standard and feel I should stay alone for the rest of my life because no one would ever compare. Story 132. Not until my child is grown up. He does not want any more children, so that is not an issue. Our child is 5 years away from college. I do not want them to have to adjust to a stranger in the house while grieving, and I also do not have complete trust in a future partner. It is often the girlfriend or boyfriend who harms children. I am not willing to test that on my child. He can date, but no one can move in until our child has moved out. Story 133. I want my spouse to be happy again. I assume there will be a grieving period. That period is different for everyone. Some grieve for a year, some for 10, some for the rest of their lifetime. I want my spouse not to be pressured into moving on but to move on when he is ready. I hope people will not criticize him for moving on too soon, in their opinion. I hope that once he is ready to move on, he will find a person who is good to him, someone who loves him and whom he loves. I also hope that he will not compare her to me. She is a different person. His love for me will be different from how he will love her. Finally, I hope she will accept that I will always be in his heart, but that I am not a threat to her and that his heart is big enough for the two of us. I have seen this happen. A friend of mine passed away. His fiancée grieved for a long time and finally moved on and found another love. She found happiness again. I want that for my husband, too. But if he chooses to stay single, that is fine as well. He will not be alone. He will always have his daughters. Story 134. Love isn't finite. Remarrying after I am gone doesn't mean they didn't love me or loved me any less than their new partner. I want them to be happy even if I am not the one contributing to their happiness. Story 135. I would want her to do whatever makes her the happiest. If that is in the arms of someone else, what do I care? I will be dead. Story 136. Yes, we have given each other our blessings to move on after one of us dies. As far as we are concerned, marriage is until death do us part. I would not want my wife to live the rest of her days lonely after I am gone. Story 137. I never thought I would, but when I lost my husband of 30 years to cancer, I eventually started dating and married a wonderful man who was also widowed. We are both very happy together and grateful to have found a companion to spend the rest of our lives with. Story 138. I would want them to go on and live their life however they wanted. If that included remarrying, absolutely go for it. Live that life and feel loved again. How could you not want that for someone you truly love? That is just how I feel. Story 139. Yes, I definitely want her to remarry and hopefully find happiness. She does not deserve to be alone in old age, unless that is what she wants, just because I am no longer alive. Story 140. Yes, especially if it was soon. He deserves love and companionship. We specifically said, until death do us part. Story 141. If I passed away right now, my husband would be alone with 3 children, all 5 years old or younger. I would not mind at all if he married someone, as long as she is a good woman who treats my children as her own. I hope I do not die soon, though. I want to see my children grow up and enjoy my marriage a little longer. Story 142. Right before my husband died, he told me that if I found someone else, I should make sure he is a better man than him. I could not fathom loving someone else. Here I am, 13 years later and in love. My significant other and I have a different view on marriage from most. We do not necessarily want that, but we are happy together. I think my husband would be happy for me. I would want the same for my spouse. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.